Okay, well, we just want to thank everyone for attending. Today's webinar will be talking about spot color mapping in Flexi, and this has been a really popular topic throughout the years because there are so many variables that go into getting the perfect color. Mark has a lot of experience teaching classes and working in all sorts of different environments with different types of printers and computers and making sure that you can get the color that you're looking for. He's been in the industry for over 25 years. He's owned several sign shops, and these days he spends his time traveling around the country teaching people how to get the best prints possible. So with no further ado, I'll turn the time over to Mark Rugen to start the webinar. And as always, just want to encourage you to type any questions you may have in the comment box there, and we'll be able to address those after the webinar is over. So feel free, whether they're about spot color mapping or about any other topic in Flexi, just drop them down in the chat window and we will get to them and get those answers for you. All right, Mark, take it away.
Thank you, Stuart. And by the way, Stuart, we are at the max right now.
Okay.
All right. Well, everybody, welcome. I saw a few from Canada, a bunch from California, people in Florida, just about everywhere. So we are glad that you're with us today. This is a brief explanation of spot color mapping and how Flexi can help you get those Pantone matches a little closer and other spot colors a little bit closer. So we're going to talk about that, and hopefully we'll get you, set up where you can use this and take advantage of this in your printing process. When we talk about color in Flexi in particular, and frankly any kind of design software, there's several different modes, if you will. So the general mode that is most common when we're designing is just an RGB color. So I've got a little RGB red there on the screen. In the middle is a CMYK, where you mix cyan, magenta, yellow, or black together to create a color. So I have 100% yellow and 100% magenta there to make that red. And then on the far right, we have what's called a spot color. So this is a spot color by definition is a certain hue, or in other words, a certain color like red, that allows you to change the, let's just say the tint of it. So it wouldn't change to another color, but it could be a lighter red or a darker red and so forth. And then, of course, we have our pesky little problems that we deal with in Pantones. I'm sure a lot of you will have that. Pantone 485C is down there on the bottom. It's a deep red in Pantone world. So all the colors I'm going to be using in this example in Flexi are going to be spot colors. And in particular, I'm going to use that Pantone 485C down there as an example to show you what actually takes place in Flexi. So we'll get into Flexi here in just a moment. One of the nice things about Flexi is that there's a great feature in Production Manager. And all of you have this regardless of your version of Flexi. So you should have this in Production Manager. I'm going to show you where you can access it. And basically it's called spot color mapping. So instead of drawing, 5 different versions of that Pantone color or spot color and printing it out and, going back and then picking a color and so forth, Flexi actually has this built in such a way that you can print out this grid of colors. And what you can do is you print that out on your media. You pick the box that's the better match for your particular media that you're printing on. And then Flexi allows you to save that in something called spot color mapping. So basically it overrides the original color with the new color that you've picked. And I know all of us have this challenge. So this is exactly what we're going to do. We're going to show you how to actually use this. So let me get into my Flexi here and again show you what's going on here. Again, if you ever wonder whether a color is a spot color or not, when you click on a color and you have your color palette, your color mixer up here, it actually will tell you whether that's an RGB color or a spot color. As you can see here, it's indicating to me that it's RGB, CMYK, spot with no name on it, and then this one, which is actually Pantone. You can also see that in the fill stroke editor over here. So when you click on this, unfortunately, it doesn't tell you whether or not it's RGB or CMYK, but if it's a spot color, you will see that color indicated here, and it will actually have a small dot on the top right-hand side of that color. So that indicates that the Pantone is in fact a spot color. So how do we actually accomplish mapping this to a better color? So the idea is we printed our Pantone red. We're not happy with it. How do we map it to a better color? Well, the idea here is that when you have a color like this 485C here that you want to really hit, and you want to map it to a better color, what you want to do is go to the File menu after you selected it, go to the File menu, and you want to export that color. And what you're going to do is you're going to save that color somewhere on your hard drive where you can find it under the actual name of the color. And it's very important that you save it with exactly the same name. So if you're adjusting Pantone 485C, you're going to want to save that as Pantone space 485C, and it's going to be an EPS file, so an encapsulated PostScript file. Now, if you're unsure about the name of that particular spot color, you can also go over here where the fill stroke editor is, and when you hit advanced on this, it will actually open it up. This is the color specs library here, and basically the name, the exact name is right here. So I would suggest that you do that. If you're trying to save this as an EPS file, what I would do is I would click on it, I'd go to advanced, and then I would copy this name right here. Just make sure you copy the exact name. Then when you export it, you would export it with that exact name. Okay, that's the first step. Now, once that's done, excuse me, and I have a little bit of a hay fever here. I'm not, if it sounds like I have a little bit of a stopped up nose, I'm not crying because Alabama lost last night, although that did happen. But anyway, bear with me. Anyway, let's go over here to Production Manager. We've saved our file as an EPS file. So now that I'm in Production Manager, I'm going to click on the printer that I want to actually map this to. So it's very specific to your printer and to your media. Okay, that's very important to understand. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that name of my printer, and if you're using a previous version, yours might be listed on the left-hand side here. Just pick on the name of the printer, go up to the Setup menu, and choose Default Job Properties. So we go to Default Job Properties. I'm going to click on that, and I know some of you live in Clemson land, so I will be careful. and that brings up Default Job Properties. Now, the third tab in Default Job Properties over here is called Color Management. So that's what you're really doing. You're using a feature from Color Management to redefine that particular color. So here we go into Color Management. I have my output profile, and so what's happening is when we're printing this Pantone red, it's going through this profile to my printer and my media, so that's what's changing perhaps the slight hue in that color. So I want to adjust it. So I have a check mark here next to Use Color Mapping. And I'm going to click on Color Mapping, the big button here. And that's going to bring up a menu that's going to allow me to open that particular color. So basically what I'm going to do here, since I saved it as an EPS file, I'm going to click on Import. And there's my Pantone number right there. That's the EPS file that I saved. Remember, it's an EPS file, okay? I'm going to click Open. And what that's going to do is display that color name right here. That's why it's important to name it properly. You want to make sure you name it properly. So according to Flexi right now, this Pantone 485C, this is actually showing me the CMYK definition for that color. So 0 cyan, 87% magenta, 80% yellow, 2% black. That's what that Pantone's defined as. But unfortunately, we're not happy with what's happening on our media. So how do we fix that? Well, click on that name, or you can actually double click on it. And what that will do is bring up the Modify Custom Spot Color menu. So here again, on the left-hand side is define those colors, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. That's the originals. The color swatch that we're going to print, I'm going to actually increase this, and I'd recommend you do this too. It's set at 5%, but sometimes those boxes are really close to one another in terms of color, kind of hard to pick them. I would go up in this, and you can do this numerous times. So I would say start with 10% differences. What that means is I want to print a swatch of colors, and I'm going to print literally, an 8x8 box of color, 64 different choices with 10% difference in color, okay? So once I change that, I would go over here and say print swatch, okay? I would click on the print swatch button. Now, I've already done this to save us a little time, so let's go back and take a look here, and that's what you're actually seeing over here on the right-hand side. So if I double click on that, for instance, to bring up this new menu here, let's just move that over a little bit. There we go. This is the actual swatch that's going to print here, okay? So it's a big swatch of colors in this case. In fact, I'm going to cancel that, and I'm going to go back to my Flexi because I have that swatch available for us that we can look at a little bit closer for explanation purposes. There we go. Okay? So this swatch prints on your media. Now, the location that's the center of that giant square of swatches right there, the number 4, in this case there's 8x8, so the number 4 and 4, that intersection, that's the original Pantone 485C color printed without color mapping. That it's using the original formulas from Pantone to print that. So that is the color that we want, but it may not match specifically our Pantone book, or perhaps it might be a little bit different. So what we do is we look at this grid and we determine that perhaps at the location 6X and 5Y, perhaps that's a better match to the actual Pantone that we're trying to hit, or the spot color we're trying to hit, whatever it is, right? So let's just say that's it, 6 and 5, okay? So what I would do then is I'd go back to my production manager here, and again, I'm going to go back to my setup and default job properties, go to the third tab again, takes just a second because that's to load all those media profiles out there, right? Make sure the profile is the same as before. And I'm going to go back to my color mapping here. And here's the Pantone color. So here again, this is original color, but I want it to change. So I'm going to double click on that. And we make it easy on you. Instead of memorizing what the cyan, magenta, yellow new values need to be, all you have to do is just get that closest matching swatch grid number here. So I believe we said that was 6. And the Y was 5. And then I'm going to click Update Color. And over on the left-hand side here, instead of the original numbers, when I click Update Color here, right, again, this would have been set to 10%, right? I hit Update Color. And basically on the left-hand side over here, it now shows that instead of those original colors, it's going to use 97% magenta and 90% yellow, because that's the definition of the CMYK values for that new swatch that I picked visually to get a better match, okay? So when I update my color like that, okay, and I click OK, then you'll see that will place those values back in my custom spot color mapping menu. So what is this doing for me? What this is doing for me is now every time Flexi sees the name Pantone 485C, exactly that name now, when it sees that name in your file, rather than printing the original Pantone color, which was off of that, it's going to use these new values. So it basically overrides the Pantone definition, and it's now mapped specifically for this media and printer. So that allows me then to get better color matching. That's the whole process right there. So there's a check mark here, use color mapping. As long as that's on, it's going to use my new defined color. Now, you know, you can do this on a per job basis. You can actually uncheck that if you want to, right? So that would be like just standard printing. It wouldn't use those values. It's going to use the original values. So you can check that on or off. So one of the things I would suggest doing is if you are going to use color mapping like this, perhaps what you want to do is go up to the top of this default job properties menu here, and there's a thing called presets. We actually did a webinar on this and a video on this. And basically what this does is it copies all the tab settings you have here. So basically if I click Save over here and I tell it, you know, all these check marks are on here, basically what I'm doing here is I'm saying, look, save this, and maybe I'm going to click on spot color or name it some sort of Pantone colors, whatever. Basically what I'm doing there is I'm setting up a preset. And what that does is that has recorded all of my settings in my default job properties, including use color mapping here, okay? So if I were to erase my color mapping, it would remember it. Basically what it's saying is, okay, if I'm back over here in Flexi and I've got some sort of image I want to print, with the Pantone 485C, and I go over here to my printer to print that, when we get this message where we're doing the, this is the rip and print settings right here, what I can do is I can go to that third tab, okay, that's where the color management tab is, and I can say there's a preset in here called spot color mapping, and I can use that spot color mapping, and it will remember those settings for me. So that's a good thing to do. It's sort of a way to sort of remember everything that we're doing here. So basically what we've done in the last few minutes here is we've talked about how to do spot color mapping. Remember, save the name exactly as it's defined, as you want it defined, and as an EPS file. You're going to print out this map from your production manager, okay? Pick a color that's going to be adjusted, and it's going to allow you to then change that using your grid here, okay? And then finally, we're going to make sure that spot color mapping is on, use color mapping, and as long as that check mark is on right there, then it will actually use the new color mapping. It's just that easy in Flexi. It's very, very simple to do. Now, this subject and many, many others are on our new Flexi sign and print training DVD, so you might want to take a look at investigating that. Write that URL down there at the bottom and go there and check it out. That's basically spot color mapping. I know Stuart's going to go through a few questions now, and we're going to open it up to any questions that you've got regarding Flexi or any other question that you've got. Stuart, take it away.
All right. So like Mark said, we'll kind of let you guys have the floor with any questions you have. We can start if you have anything specifically about spot color mapping or about color printing in general. Just go ahead and type those into the chat window there, and Mark will be able to give us some feedback.
Just by the way, there's one person that says I'm kind of lost because they didn't join on time. That's fine. We've recorded this, and it's being recorded, so we're going to place this on our SAI YouTube site, so you'll be able to see it again. That's good.
Okay.
Can you see
Anthony
questions?
was wondering about. Sorry, Anthony was wondering about soft proofing and which versions of Flexi have it, and if you can just kind of go over that again.
Sure. Soft proofing is available in all versions of Flexi, and basically what soft proofing is about is being able to preview what a color would look like on your monitor, what a color would look like on your monitor as to how it would print on your printer. So in other words, soft proofing shows you a preview of what's actually going to print on your printer or very close to it. So what happens with soft proofing is there's a button up here at the top on, I think it was 10, 11, and 12 called soft proof. Prior to that, in the view menu, there was it's over here, by the way, in those versions. I think it was called Preview CMYK. So it's actually in all versions. I don't think it was in 5. Hopefully none of you are still running that, but definitely from 7 onward, it's in all those versions. And the way that works is if you use the Edit menu, and then you go down to Color Settings, this menu is what's controlling how that color is going to display on your monitor, whether it's going to display accurately or inaccurately. So for instance, if you have this sort of setting here, and I'm just going to switch these over to something that's inaccurate, okay? I'm inaccurate right now. And I click on my soft proof here, you'll see that that color changes very dramatically. So I'm going to leave soft proof on for a minute. So again, I'm trying to proof what's going to happen. And by the way, if I send this to my printer, I'm going to get some other color than that lime green or red or whatever. I'm going to definitely get a big change and shift in my colors. Because what's happening is through the Edit menu and Color Settings, you've actually told Flexi that when you send this information to the rip and print part, the production manager part, to use these settings. And of course, they're not set up correctly. So one thing you can do to get these to print more accurately is basically use our generic LCD monitor profile for your monitor. If you have a monitor profile for your monitor, if you've made one, that's what you would use here. You would tell it what printer you're printing on and what ICC profile you're using. So that tells Flexi, you know, this is the system that I have hooked to my computer. And then for the input profile, I would recommend that you go to here, and we've even updated this in latest versions so that it's kind of defaulted to this, but set that to sRGB. That's a good setting. It just gives you a good range of colors for printing and tends to give you a bit more accuracy. So if I say all those things and I click OK, you'll see my green is now much closer to the lime green that I wanted to print earlier. So this is a good, very good approximation then of what will happen on your printer. And in my travels throughout the U.S. and using Roland's and Muto's and HP's and lots of other printers, it's very accurate. It does a very good job of reflecting what's going to happen on your printer. So good question. Very, very good.
Okay, looks like we have another question here from Rick. He wants to know if there's a way to create gaps on the swatches on the grid. When matching a color, having the squares next to each other kind of creates a bleed into the swatches around it. Is there a way to make a gap between them without having to do it manually?
Right. There is no automatic way to do that. If we take a look here, this is a predefined grid actually. So what I know it becomes something somewhat difficult to see sometimes. Some of these colors may look very, very similar to one another. But that's why I generally say start with like 10% or even higher. You could go 15% differences in those squares. Pick a color after that. Update your swatch, and then maybe go down to 10% and then to 5%. You can print this over and over again until you can really refine the colors that you're looking for. So, unfortunately, there's no way to change those to white without doing it manually at this point. So something to take a note of, Stuart, and perhaps recommend to the folks in programming.
Development about that.
Mm-hmm.
Color swatch, adding some gaps. Okay, we have another question here from Lawrence. He wants to know if you need a different setting for the TMS 485C if you're printing out white paper versus clear film.
Not sure. The whole process will work the same. So it is very media dependent. So you will use the exact same procedure no matter what your media is. I think that's the answer to that question.
Okay. And then Pascal has a question, and this one, may be specific to the particular incident, but said I have printed 6 of a particular image of the same file and have had a color shift on 1. Why does this happen? Are there any variables that might cause one of them to change? I mean, I'm sure there are many variables, but
if you're printing using the same settings, obviously you should get the same results. So I do not know what the issue would be there, unless it were just a media issue itself. But as far as Flexi is concerned, if you're using the same color management settings throughout, and that's why I always recommend on jobs like that, if you're going to do repeats, be sure you set up a preset. But if you're just making copies, if you have one image and you've clicked 6 copies and then one of them's not right, my instinct would tell me it's a media or printer issue rather than a Flexi issue. I can't see that changing.
Okay. Yeah, all the different media types.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. We've got some other questions here. Looks like we've had a lot of different discussions of different substrates and different profiles. But it looks like one thing I'm reading from all the comments is that red, the color red, has been really difficult for a lot of people.
Yes, and
why is red such an issue?
Yeah, it's interesting question because it's one of those discussions that's like between Mac and IBM guys or I mean, it's just really weird. A lot of our users get absolutely beautiful reds and then some do not. So what I'm going to explain what goes on with reds. Or it's not just red, by the way. It's any color, okay? This is what's happening. Every color you put into Flexi, especially if you just use a general RGB color, no problem. It's defined as red. There it is on the screen right there, right? So I'm going to turn off my SAW proof. This SAW proof is no longer on right now. This is just a big red square showing on my monitor. Now I'm going to click SAW proof on, and you can see that it actually gets a richer red on the screen here. Why? Because it's being controlled by your color settings here. So it's not just red, it's all your colors, okay? It's not just red. But I know red, sometimes you get an orangey red and so forth. That's really all about your color settings in here. So if you use this generic monitor profile, and if you don't have that or don't want to use it, just use sRGB. That's fine. And you define your profiles. It's the profile and it's the input profile that are controlling the language of translation between RGB and the CMYK inks on your printer. So if you're doing those things, you can see here, I set this sRGB thing up, and I've got an orangey red on here. Good thing I have SAW proof on, because that's showing me what's happening to my color for whatever reason, for this particular media and this particular print. So if I go to my color settings in here, this is why I typically use my generic monitor profile here, and for my input profile sRGB, and that tends to give you a better color matching system, if you will. So you're going to get better color. Now, if again you've done that and you're not getting the results that you like, this is the perfect webinar for you, because what you could do is redefine that red. Take that red right there, and what you can do is say, I want to make that, let's go to here. All right, so I'm going to turn on my color mixer here, and I'm going to say, take this RGB red and define that as a spot color. All right, so now that's considered the color red, but it's a spot color red. So do your color mapping as we described before. Export this as an EPS. Make sure the name is RED. And then once you're finished with that, what I would do is I would go over here to my color, and I would just drag this down to my swatch table, and I'd maybe get rid of the regular red and just use this red here, that's defined as a spot color red. And that way you can perhaps get better color matching as well. And we have a whole series of seminars that we're doing this year, by the way. In addition to just Flexi, Muto is sponsoring seminars called Color Management Secrets. And basically, this is one of the topics in that particular discussion. And we're going to expand that into even other seminars outside of Muto as well. But this is one of the things that we're going to do. In that class, we'll actually go through printing the red and why does it not print right and how do you adjust it and so forth. So there's several other things that we can do in this color settings menu that could affect the output, and we're going to show all that in our seminars.
Okay, looks like we've got a couple more questions here.
Mm-hmm.
So this one's from Jason. It's a little bit longer. He says, would you add Pantone colors to the color mapping list as you need them so the list grows? For example, for your next job, you need Pantone 280. Would you add 280 to the same color mapping profile as the one you use for Pantone 485 on that specific media, or would you have to build a separate one?
No, you can. You can add as many as you need. So basically, even going back to my discussion on red here, if you had issues with, say, red and blue, maybe blue print's a little purplish, and maybe yellow's not quite as yellow or whatever, you can add as many as you need to that color mapping system. So if the color's not there, it's going to ignore it, obviously. So if there's no Pantone 485, it would just ignore it. But it would use the other color mapping settings that you have in there. So you could literally do this for many different colors as needed, definitely.
Okay. And then we have a question here from Fran who wants to know, should you always be designing in RGB or CMYK colors? What's your take on that, Mark?
Right. I want everybody to understand this. When you're working on a monitor, everything is RGB. I don't care if you design in CMYK RGB, you're always going to have an RGB display on your monitor. Number two, when you send that file to print, it is going to change either RGB or CMYK formula, whatever method you're using to design in. It's going to change that into CMYK ink values. So it's running, whether it's CMYK or RGB, it's running those monitor colors and formulas through the profile to determine what the ink color should be. So that's really the critical thing that happens. Now, most folks, a lot of your customers, I would think, are just going to give you CMYK colors. RGB colors. And many, many times, there's all kinds of discussions on the internet all about this. It really, in my opinion, whatever you're comfortable with, there's no preference on my part. I generally design in RGB, and then I use my soft proof, often to see what's happening on the screen here. And if I need to redefine something as a CMYK color to get a better match with my soft proofing, that's what I do. And so I would use soft proofing and design using either formula. I don't think there's a good way, one way or the other.
Okay, thank you, Mark. So Jason just had a follow-up question about the Pantone colors. Said, so in theory, you could build color mapping for the entire Pantone library for a specific media.
Yes, you could. That's very true.
Okay. And then it looks like, here we go. So Joy had a question about using multiple programs. Said, my designer uses Adobe Illustrator and saves files as TIFFs for me to print. I print the TIFF directly in FlexiPrint using an HP 310 latex printer without opening the file in FlexiPrint Editor. Will this color mapping work in the printing process we are using? We have FlexiPrint Editor but do not use it to design.
Yes. So you're looking at two programs here. So what you have as an HP user is you have your FlexiPrint Editor, which is sort of a version of the design side of Flexi Design and Print, and then you have your RIP software. So that particular feature, I have not looked at the HP version. I presume that it's in there, and you would do the very same thing. You could define a color, and in fact, let me go back to my production manager here real quick. So in this particular menu for your HP, basically when you go to your default job properties and you go to that third tab, give it a second here to show up. Okay, and you do your color mapping. You can import those EPS files. So if you build that EPS file in Illustrator and save it as a Pantone EPS file with that name, you can import it right into this menu here. You can also, by the way, just click Add over here, and you can literally type in the values if you want to. So you could type in the name of the color and then type in the values right here and then print that swatch, and that would work for you also. So you do not need to use the editor side in order to use the spot color mapping.
Okay. Thank you. So it looks like we've got a few more questions here, and a lot of the participants are actually answering the questions as well, which I think is wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone. Some of the questions, Marissa wanted to know if soft proofing is available in Flexi 11, and I believe you said earlier that it is available in all versions of Flexi. Is that correct, Mark?
That's correct. Yes, it is. It's available in all versions of Flexi. Flexi 11, look at the top up here at the very top, and you'll see a little monitor with an RGB little circle in it. That's the soft proof button.
Okay, and then Tanya was talking about exporting to VersaWorks. So she tries to design with a roll and color chart and wants to make sure the screen is showing what is actually going to print, which the soft proofing should be able to help with.
It should, yes. Now you have to keep in mind that the profiles that are being used in VersaWorks are not the same profiles that are provided with Flexi. So what you have to do is you'll have to basically transfer those profiles from VersaWorks to the profile folder in your Flexi Designer or whatever it is you're using. So I have a paper on that as well as a DVD for all VersaWorks users. So if you're interested in that, I believe if you'll, let me just bring this up real quick. I don't have it on there. That's fine. We have a new blog that we started that I use with SA International. It's called LearnFlexi.com. So go to LearnFlexi.com, and if you click on that, there's some things you can get regarding using Flexi with VersaWorks.
Okay. So we have a question about the EPS files. Anthony said, do you need to keep the EPS file for color mapping in that folder for as long as you want it, or does Flexi load the EPS file and save it into its settings file?
Yeah, the EPS file is only used for the purpose of opening and doing the color mapping. Once you do the color mapping, you no longer need to keep that EPS file. You can delete that. So it's just used to obtain the color numbers so that Flexi can do the color mapping. But once that is done and you've saved that color mapping in Flexi, you no longer need that EPS file.
Okay. And we just have some people wondering where the video...
one thing. Yeah, hang on one second, Stuart. I want to mention, I saw a comment on here, and I do want to mention this in regard to Pantones and so forth. And it was a good comment on here. I don't know who said it, but basically understand also that not all Pantone colors can be printed. So even though your customer thinks they can, they can't. There's a huge range of Pantone colors, but our inkjet processing, is limited to CMYK inks basically. So there's only so many combinations and so many percentages that you can add to one another to make color, and that limits it. So you can probably print somewhere between 70 to 80% of the Pantone colors, but there's another. If you state that another way, there's another 20 to 30% that you cannot make. It's just the nature of our machines. So as inks develop, I'm sure that there's going to be manufacturers out there that will start adding, other colors of inks, reds and blues and greens and that sort of thing to kind of expand that number. But just keep in mind, not all Pantone colors can be printed. It's a good thing to remember.
So we won't be printing neon green.
Correct.
All right. So let's see. Oh, some people were just wondering about the recording of this video, where it will be posted. We'll be posting it on the SA International YouTube page. And for everyone that's registered for the video or attended, we're going to be sending you out a link as well so that you can review the video whenever you like. Okay, and then we've got a few more people asking about soft proofing and having their questions answered. Okay, Andre wanted to know, do you need to use a file like an EPS as a sample, or can I just enter the color values in the color mapping window?
Yes, you can enter the color values in the color mapping window if you want to do it that way. Absolutely.
Okay. And Meg wants to know if it's possible to get a list of Pantone colors that are possible to be printed. We were just talking about the wide range there.
Yeah. Well, the answer to that is no, because it's going to depend on the media that you're printing on, as well as the kind of printer and inks that you have in your printer. So there is no specific list. It's as we mentioned, some of the obvious ones like the big neon orange and green and so forth. That's probably not going to happen, but there's no specific list that we can provide for that.
Right. And it'll expand if you add things like light cyan or light magenta. You can print more possible.
It would expand the gamut a little bit. But one thing you can do for the person asking that is in the View menu up here in Flexi, there's actually a Create Swatch feature, basically. And you could open the Pantone library and actually print every single color if you wanted to. I'm just going to show you a current palette, but this is my little RGB palette down here. So basically what that would do is, and you would remember now, when you're picking that Pantone library, you're talking about thousands of colors, so this is a huge file. But anyway, you've got this little print down here. When you click OK on that, what that does is that actually creates a swatch table, so it gives you the name of the color that's next to it. So you could actually print that, and even if you do a saw proof, as you see here, you can actually see some of the colors that are going to be affected by this particular media, right? So that would give you an idea of which colors might be a little issue. So you could do that, and you can also do the same thing in the edit menu, or excuse me, on the view menu where it says create swatch. There's also a CMYK table here. So if you click OK on that, that would be the all the combinations of cyan, magenta, and yellow. And that sort of gives you perhaps something else you can use if you're trying to match colors.
Okay. So we've got a comment here from Ryan. It says, I know this is a little off topic, but how do I make the color orange pop out in printing? We've never been able to print off well on orange.
Well, I would definitely start with maybe your just some sort of color here, and I would work with your soft proofing. You know, I mean, orange is probably one of those colors that may be a little difficult to do, but I would work with your color mixer here. Perhaps that's the only thing I can tell you. It's going to be very specific to your media, because making that orange pop is a fairly difficult task, because it's just one of those colors that are difficult to make with your CMYK mixtures. There's no pop orange combination, basically.
All right, it looks like we're almost out of time, but I have another question here. Maxwell wanted to know, if I have a roll-in color system library chart and always design in roll-in colors, what is the advantage to spot mapping?
Right, same advantage. I'm going to right-click on my swatch table down here, and I'm going to go to Open Table. And in my library over here in Flexi, there's actually Roland. And then here's my rolling color system library down here. So what that did was that added the rolling color system swatch table to the bottom of Flexi down here. So again, if I have, I'm just going to pick this color here. Let's just delete these for a moment. Okay, so let's go a little down the list here on the rolling colors real quick. All right, so I'm going to click on this RVWDP43K, right? So I click on that, and that's the spot color from that roll-in list right there. So again, I could go through the process. If that color's not coming out exactly the way that I would like it to, I could go through that whole process of redefining and mapping just that one roll-in color as well. So that's one advantage of the roll-in color system library.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mark. I think that's everything for today. I just wanted to thank everyone for coming, for all the great questions and discussions that I saw going on in the chat window here. And we will be posting this video, like I mentioned, on the SA International YouTube page. And Adam, I saw that you were asking about advanced classes for advanced users for color mapping. And Mark will be teaching several classes throughout the year, different MUTO facilities. You can learn about the dates and locations at learnflexi.com. And we hope to see you at one of those events or one of our Flexi Live training events coming up. We'll be sure to email you the details.
Thank you very much, everyone. And even though I have some Clemson people out there, Roll Tide. Choice right there. That's an RGB Roll Tide color. Have fun today, everybody.
All right. We'll talk to you guys next time.